Most of us think of a monster as something completely separate from humanity. An aberration, something born in the shadows, totally unlike us. But what if that's just a comforting lie? What if the makings of a serial killer aren't found in some alien soil, but in the common ground of the human psyche? It's estimated there are likely between 25 and 50 active serial killers in the United States at any given time. They are our neighbors, our colleagues, the person we pass on the street. This chilling thought forces a deeply unsettling question. Not just what makes them a monster, but what stops the rest of us from becoming one. Today, we're looking into the complex and disturbing mind of the serial killer to understand what really drives them. For decades, serial killers have haunted the public imagination. They are the subjects of blockbuster films, viral true crime documentaries, and endless news cycles that turn real-life horror into a kind of myth. But when you peel back the sensationalism, you're left with a profound and deeply human question. Why? What process, what chain of events, or what broken piece inside a person pushes them to commit calculated acts of murder over and over again? Figuring out their psychology isn't just about morbid curiosity. It's a huge challenge for law enforcement, for psychologists, and for society. We struggle to get a grip on their motives, because, unlike most murders that are driven by a clear personal reason, the violence of serial killers often feels random and senseless. Their victims are usually strangers, chosen based on a specific type or pattern that exists only in the killer's head. This brings up fundamental questions about the nature of evil itself. Are these people driven by a compulsion they can't resist? Is it an insatiable hunger for power and control? Or are their actions the final catastrophic explosion of deep-seated trauma? The search for answers isn't just an academic exercise. It's a vital part of trying to spot warning signs, to step in, and to get justice for their victims. To start untangling this, we have to look at the environment that can shape a potential killer. The nurture side of the argument suggests that murderers are made, not born, forged in the fires of a traumatic childhood. The life stories of many serial killers are tragically similar, marked by relentless physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. Studies consistently show staggering rates of childhood trauma among convicted serial killers. For example, a 2005 study published in the Journal of Police and Criminal Psychology found that, on average, 50% of killers experience psychological abuse, 36% physical abuse, and 26% sexual abuse. This constant exposure to cruelty during their formative years can warp a developing mind in devastating ways. Dysfunctional families, riddled with rejection, neglect, and conflict, can breed deep feelings of isolation, rage, and a desperate need for the control they were so brutally denied. Think of Eileen Wuornos, who endured an almost unimaginable childhood of abuse and neglect before she began her own string of murders. Her life is a harrowing example of how extreme adversity can pave the way for violence. The trauma becomes a blueprint. The pain they suffered is later mirrored in the pain they inflict, a horrifying cycle where the victim becomes the victimizer. But that can't be the whole picture. Millions of people survive horrific childhoods and never hurt a soul. So, what else is going on? This brings us to the other side of the coin, nature. Is it possible that some people are just born with a predisposition to violence? For years, this idea felt like science fiction, but modern genetics and neuroscience have uncovered some startling clues. Some research is focused on specific genes, like the MAOA gene, controversially nicknamed the warrior gene. This gene helps regulate key chemicals in the brain that control mood and impulse, like serotonin and dopamine. Some studies suggest that people with a low-activity version of this gene might be more prone to aggression, especially if they're also exposed to stressors like childhood abuse. It is absolutely not a serial killer gene, but it might be one piece of a much larger biological puzzle. Beyond genetics, neuroscientists have found brain abnormalities in some serial killers. Brain scans of convicted murderers have in some cases shown reduced activity or damage in the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for empathy, morality, and self-control. For someone with these biological factors, the world might feel fundamentally different. They may not process emotions or the consequences of their actions like the average person. This doesn't mean they're legally insane. In fact, most serial killers know the difference between right and wrong. They just don't care. Section 4, the predator's mask, psychopathy. This chilling lack of concern is a hallmark of a condition frequently found in serial killers, psychopathy. It's important to be clear here. Psychopathy is not the same as antisocial personality disorder, ASPD. ASPD is a formal clinical diagnosis found in the DSM-5 which focuses heavily on a pattern of criminal and antisocial behaviors. Psychopathy is a deeper personality construct, defined by a profound lack of empathy, a talent for manipulation, and an inability to feel remorse. While many psychopaths would meet the criteria for ASPD, not everyone with ASPD is a psychopath. The psychopath can be charming and intelligent on the surface, a mask they use to lure and disarm their victims. Ted Bundy is probably the most infamous example. He was charismatic, handsome, and working on a law degree, all while carrying out a horrific spree of murders. He was the perfect example of the psychopathic trait of using a normal-seeming facade to hide a monstrous interior. On top of this, many serial killers show traits of narcissistic personality disorder, which feeds their grandiose sense of self-importance and their bottomless craving for power and attention. This combination of psychopathy and narcissism creates a predator who sees other people not as human beings with feelings but as objects for their own gratification. Their victim's suffering is irrelevant. The act of killing becomes the ultimate high, the ultimate expression of power, a way to play God and exert total control over someone's life and death. We've talked about the trauma that can shape them, and the biology that might predispose them. But how do these things actually come together to create a killer? Before we get to that critical turning point, if you find this look into the criminal mind compelling, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more. And let us know in the comments which case study you find the most fascinating. For decades, the debate raged, nature versus nurture, born or made. But modern research suggests this is a false choice. The terrifying truth is that neither one creates a serial killer on its own. Instead, it's the catastrophic interaction between them. Think of it like this. A person might be born with certain genetic vulnerabilities or slight brain differences, the nature part. In a loving, stable home, those vulnerabilities might never get switched on. The person could live a perfectly normal life. But if that same person is subjected to a childhood of abuse, neglect, and trauma, the nurture part, those dormant vulnerabilities can be activated. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente put it perfectly with a powerful analogy. Genetics loads the gun, personality and psychology aim it, and your experiences pull the trigger. This is the modern understanding of how a serial killer is formed. It's not a single cause, but a perfect storm. A convergence of biological predispositions and environmental triggers that sets someone on a path to violence. Jeffrey Dahmer's case seems to be a chilling example of this. He was described as a lonely child who had dark fantasies, which were then amplified by feelings of rejection and early trauma, ultimately blurring the line between sexual gratification and horrific violence. It's this complex, tragic interplay that investigators now focus on, shifting from the search for a single cause to understanding a whole web of influences. So where does that leave us? A serial killer isn't a simple movie monster born of pure evil. They are the product of a tangled, horrifying equation where biology, psychology, and environment collide. We can identify the risk factors, the traumatic childhoods, the personality disorders like psychopathy, and the potential genetic and neurological markers. Understanding these pathways is essential for law enforcement, helping them build profiles and narrow down suspects, and for society as we try to develop better ways to intervene. But even with all our science, we're left with a haunting truth. We can explain the patterns, we can connect the dots from their past to the horrors of their present, but we may never fully get our heads around that final internal choice to take a life, and then to do it again and again. There is a darkness at the core of their psyche, an unknowable element that defies any simple explanation, and continues to hold a grim fascination for us all. It's a reminder that the line between a normal life and the abyss can be terrifyingly thin, shaped by forces both seen and unseen. What do you think is the most significant factor that shapes a serial killer? Their genes, their upbringing, or that unique combination of both? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to continue this exploration of criminal behavior, be sure to watch our next video on psychopaths in everyday life. Thanks for watching.